Hey guys, welcome back to Release the Craftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft. Storycraft where I tell you a story and I do a craft. And today I'm doing my FOC challenge for Randy over at Thunderhorse. I will link her site and the relevant information down below. I've done this a couple of times, but I thought it would be fun to do it as a Storycraft, so here we are. And I'm also telling you guys the tale of Tatterhood. This tale comes to us from the far, far away land of Norway. It's a Norwegian tale. It's also maybe a Christmas tale, but I don't think it's a Christmas tale. It one day happens on Christmas, so I think it's okay. It's safe to tell you guys the story right now. So we're just going to jump into it. So in the way long ago, you guys, there was a king and a queen. And guess what they wanted? Just, if you've been listening to this series for any amount of time, I bet you already know. The one thing that they longed for more than anything in the world, you guessed it, it was a child. And, yeah, they were actually so bummed that they actually decided to be proactive about their lack of child by adopting one. So they adopted a little girl, and they took care of her, and everything seemed great. Like, they were very happy together. They had a little happy life with their daughter. And one day, though, the queen noticed that her adopted daughter was outside playing with a little beggar girl, and the queen was like, gross, disgusting. So she goes outside, and she's like, hey, you can't play with little beggar children. You're a princess. This is the rules. And the little beggar girl is like, hey, if you knew who my mom was, you wouldn't be out here, like, talking all this shit to me. So the queen's like, well, who's your mom then? Okay, go ahead and, like, woo me with who your mom is. So the little girl tells her that her mom is a witch. And she has a bunch of knowledge. She's, like, super smart. And, if she wanted to, she could ask her mom how to get her own child. At which point, the adopted child's like, hi, hello, I am right here. And the queen's like, oh, yeah, totally, you are right here, but you said your mom knows how I could have a baby? And the little beggar girl says, yeah, invite her over, and she'll tell you exactly how to get a baby. So the queen does. She immediately calls for the beggar girl's mom to come over, and that woman is, in fact, definitely a witch. Also, she's super, super smart. She's so smart that she's looking at the queen going, don't you already have a child? Well, the queen is like, please tell me how to have my own baby. Please tell me how to have a baby. And the witch is like, yeah, but you have a kid. You don't actually need me for anything. And so the queen starts to pour her some wine, and she's like, here, have a drink. We'll just talk about some other things, just girly things, and have another drink. And we'll talk about some more girly things and, like, our struggles as women. And we'll just hang out together while you have another drink, maybe. And after having several drinks and some pretty deep, heartfelt conversations, the witch finds herself to be a bit more open and receptive to the queen's request to find out how to have her own child. And she tells the queen that it's actually really easy. All she has to do is take a bath in 2 separate pails of water. So they need to get, like, 2 different bins of water up to her room. She has to bathe in both of them. And then when she's done, she spills them out on the floor underneath her bed, ignores the mess, goes to bed. In the morning, there's going to be 2 flowers. One is going to be really beautiful. She's going to need to eat that one. One's going to be really gross and ugly and disgusting. Don't eat that one. The witch is very specific. She says, eat the pretty flower, leave the gross flower. It's a rare flower, but don't eat it. Please. And the queen's like, yeah, no, I got it. The instructions are easy enough. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Also tell your kid to fuck off and not come around here anymore. And the queen goes upstairs, and she does exactly what the witch tells her to. She takes her bath, she throws them on the floor, she goes to bed. She wakes up in the morning. There are, in fact, indeed, 2 flowers. One beautiful, like, stunning rose, pristine, perfect, sweet smelling, and one gross, decrepit, kind of rotted looking, black, shriveled up thing that could maybe be called a flower. And the queen eats the pretty one, because of course, why wouldn't you? And it is delicious, you guys. It is the best thing she's ever eaten. It is so scrumdiddly-umptious that she's like, well, if this one was so good, then the other one must also be good. And I hate to break it to you guys, we never find out if the other one was actually good or not, but she eats it. She eats it up. And, because it was magic, the queen is immediately pregnant. Immediately, out of the gate. And after a little bit of time, she gives birth. And on the day of the birth, at the moment of birth, while the midwife is coaching her through, the midwife is like, oh, it is a baby. that's coming out for sure. It's definitely a baby. And the queen is like, clutching to the, what's it called? The bedpost, grunting and groaning and doing all the things you do in childbirth. I don't know. I've never done it and never will. But the queen is going for it, and she's like, what do you mean it's definitely a baby? And the midwife's like, yeah, it's a baby, all right, because what comes out of the queen is, in fact, a baby. It is. It's a little girl baby on top of that, but it's a little girl baby clutching a spoon, a wooden spoon, a giant wooden spoon, not like giant, but like a hefty size, like we're stirring the pot of pasta sauce wooden spoon, and she's holding the spoon as she's coming out. But that's not the only thing about this baby. She's also the ugliest baby anyone's ever seen, and I'm not being hyperbolic. She's ugly. She's an ugly, ugly baby. And on top of that, you guys, she's not just an ugly baby holding a big old wooden spoon being birthed through the canal of the queen as we speak. She's an ugly baby holding a wooden spoon who also happens to be riding a goat. It doesn't say baby goat. It says goat. So the queen gives birth to a little baby that's hideous, holding a wooden spoon, riding a goat. And when the midwife goes, it's a girl, the queen looks and starts sobbing because this is not what she wanted. She did not want a horrible, ugly baby riding a goat with a wooden spoon. She wanted a pretty, beautiful baby. And the little baby looks at her and goes, hey, it's because you ate the ugly flower, Mom. But don't worry. My sister's coming. She's going to be the beautiful, perfect daughter that you wanted. And then some. And then the queen goes, she's coming? What do you mean she's coming? And the little baby goes, right now. She's coming right now. The queen ignores the fact that her newborn baby who's holding a wooden spoon and riding a goat is talking. We all ignore this fact. We ask no questions. And in fact, immediately following that, the queen she was pregnant with twins. She gives birth to a beautiful baby girl who is as beautiful and perfect as that first rose that she ate. And here's the thing. It doesn't say that she's born with a cowl, like a tattered cowl that she wears all the time, but she does wear the cowl all the time. And because she wears this tattered, ugly cowl, they all call her Tatterhood. That's her name. They name her exactly what she wears. They don't name her wooden spoon holder or goat rider. They name her Tatterhood because that was, I guess, the most interesting feature about this baby was that she was wearing an ugly sackcloth for a cowl. And they raised them both. They loved them both, actually. The king and queen are actually very thrilled to have their daughters, even though they could not be more different if they tried. One is beautiful, fair, kind, sweet, and gentle, and the other one is ugly and brash and loud and takes up a lot of space and is really mouthy because she could speak from the time she was born. And it turns out, you guys, these two little girls, get along famously. They are, like, in love with each other as sisters can be. They get along so well that they are basically inseparable. So the pretty sister, who does not get a name in this story, by the way, we get Tatterhood and No Name Princess. The pretty sister, though, she loves her sister, like fiercely loves her sister, defends her sister constantly. Anytime someone makes a face at her, she's like, hey, watch it. Watch it. Not around my beautiful sister, because to her, Tatterhood is the most beautiful, perfect sister anyone could ever ask for, even though she is loud, rambunctious, and always riding her goat and waving her wooden spoon around. And so, a couple years go by, and the girls grow up. They grow up into beautiful young women, and one night, the night that happens to be Christmas Eve, there is a huge, like, ruckus going on outside, and it starts to, like, enter the castle. This noise just sort of comes as a wave through the castle, and Tatterhood demands that the queen tell her exactly what it is, because the queen's like, oh my god, lock yourselves up, guys, like, let's get in this room, let's bunker down until this is over. And so Tatterhood's like, tell me, mother, right now, what's going on, what's happening. So the queen tells her that there's a bunch of trolls and witches outside, and they come every 7 years, and the story's not really specific about the timeline that we're dealing with, but for whatever reason, they didn't notice the first 7 years of their life, or the second 7 years of their lives, that this happened, but it happened this year. This is the 7th yearest of them all. I don't know what the timeline is. I'm going to assume that this is the third time, because I want all of my people to be of, like, legal ages of consent, and you'll see why. But there's a bunch of trolls and witches outside, and they are absolutely tearing up the palace. And so Tatterhood's like, oh, is that all? I can handle that, no problem. Don't even worry about it. You all just sit in this room, lock yourselves up, let me take care of it. I got my goat, I got my wooden spoon, I got it covered. Nobody open this door, though. Like, let me work. Just let me do my thing, okay? Keep the door closed. And so she does. She leaves the room. She goes out there. There is even an even louder commotion happening now. The walls of the palace are shaking. So much stuff is happening outside. The king and queen are content. They're like, our strange daughter's doing strange things, but it's not affecting us in any way in this room, so we're not going to ask any questions or even be worried. And they're chill. They just chill and they wait. But the princess, the pretty princess, is really concerned about her sister because she's like, I love my sister, and she's out there all by herself doing God knows what, facing who knows what kinds of evil with these trolls and these witches. I gotta do something. I at least gotta check on her and make sure she's okay. So the pretty princess opens the door to look outside and see what's happening to Tatterhood, and when she opens the door, a witch happens to curse her head right off her shoulders. Don't worry though, guys. She puts a cow's head on it. A calf's head, to be precise, on her shoulders in place of her head. And because now the pretty princess has a cow's head for her head, she gets on all fours and she starts mooing, and she's just a cow now. That's what happened. So the pretty princess is missing her head. She's got a calf's head there. And when Tatterhood gets done, the noise dies down. All the trolls and witches are gone. She comes up there. She's like, whew, I did it. I took care of it. You don't have to worry about them. They're not going to come back around here again. I handled business like you wouldn't believe with just my wooden spoon and my goat. And then she looks and she's like, what the hell is that? And they're like, oh, it's your sister. She opened the door while you were out there saving our lives. And, they took her head. And so Tatterhood's like, Jesus Christ, you guys, do I have to do everything around here? Okay, here we go. Here's what we're going to do. Dad, you're going to give me a ship. You're going to supply it with all the things a ship needs. I want it to be totally stocked up, totally decked out. And then I'm going to take my sister and my goat and my spoon, and I'm gonna go get my sister's head back. And the king's like, yeah, okay, no problem. Like, you want a ship? Well, you'll have to get a captain and a crew. And she's like, no. I didn't say captain and crew. I said ship, supplies, sister, goat, spoon. Those are all the things I need. And so the king's like, well, who's gonna run the ship while you're sailing? And she's like, I didn't ask you to ask me questions. Just do it. And the king's like, oh, solid argument. And so he does. He gives her a ship, everything she asked for, totally decked out, fully supplied. The princess takes her calf sister and gets on the boat. Tatterhood, goat, calf sister, spoon, and they depart. And it's actually really smooth sailing. There's no problems. Tatterhood is able to manage everything from the back of her goat using only her wooden spoon and her wits. So she manages to sail to the faraway land that all the trolls and the witches came from. She happens to find the witches all holed up in a cave with her sister's head mounted on the wall like a prized deer. And using just her goat, they hop through the window. She uses her spoon to terrorize the witches because they remember when she beat the shit out of them the first time. So all the witches scatter. She manages to get her sister's head back, go back to the boat, switch it back out with the calf's head. It's so silly. I love this story so much, you guys. But she switches out her head, and then she sticks her into the ship's cabin, the rooms underneath. She's like, here, you chill out. I'm going to sail us back home. Don't worry about nothing. I got it. I got everything under control. So they start sailing back. And on the way back, there happens to be a storm. And the storm takes them drastically off course, like way out of the way. And Tatterhood's like, shit, okay, well, we're going to have to make the best of a good situation. So they pull up to the port of a brand new kingdom they've never been to before. And when they get there, the guy at the port, the little dock worker, is like, hey, announce yourself and tell us why you're here and what's going on. And he sees this ugly woman riding on the back of a goat, waving her wooden spoon with this, little ratty cow on her head. And she's like, I am Tatterhood, and I have something very valuable and very precious in the hold of my ship, and I will not show it to anyone but your king, so go get him. And the guy's like, oh, that's not how things work here. And she's like, I didn't ask you to tell me about how things work here. I said, go get your king. And the guy's like, valid argument. So he goes and he tells the king, hey, there's this crazy ugly woman on the back of a goat waving a wooden spoon, and she says that she has something really valuable and really precious in her ship. She won't let us look at it, but she says she'll only show it to you. And the king is like, well, I have lived a pretty full life. I am a widower. I have an adult son to carry on my line. So what's the worst that can happen? I'll just go down there and see what this ugly woman wants. You said she's riding a goat? And so the king goes down to the dock because he's intrigued. He's absolutely intrigued on who would show up and demand that the king come see what precious thing they have in their cargo. And when he gets there, Tatterhood's like, ta-da! And out comes her beautiful sister. And the king falls in love with her immediately. He's like, oh my god, that is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I think I'm in love with you. And the princess, despite being half his age at least, is like, oh, I find that to be very favorable. I'd love to pursue this relationship with you. And he's like, great, marry me. And so she's like, oh yeah, I would love to do that too. But here's the thing, I can't get married before my sister. And then the king looks, does that little side eye, little eyes scroll over to the right, and he's looking at Tatterhood, and he's like, this is your sister? This person right here? Which is the nicest thing I can say about this creature with the matted hair and the cowl and the spoon and the goat. And the princess is like, yeah, that's my sister. And I couldn't possibly marry before her. She's actually older than me. So it would just be the most respectful thing if you could find someone for her to marry. And the king's like, ooh, just like anybody? And the princess is like, no, we're both princesses. So of course, my sister deserves the best that you can offer. And the king's like, oh, shucks, I really like you so much. I don't know what else to do but offer my son to your ugly sister? And Tatterhood's like, yeah, that'll work. I'll take him. I'll take your son who's my age. Well, you marry my sister who's not your age. Perfect. So, the king goes back to the castle, brings Tatterhood and her sister with him, and he tells the prince about it, and the prince is like, what do you mean I gotta marry that ugly girl on the back of a goat with a spoon and a tattered cowl? And he's like, yeah, you got to do me a solid, bro, because I really want to marry this girl. And the prince is like, it just feels like maybe you've already been married, and maybe, like, if the situation was reversed, you would, like, think about me maybe kind of a little bit, your son, and be, like, considering my wants and needs, and how this is going to be my first and only relationship, that you're sort of saddling me with this creature you're calling a woman. And the king's like, hey, I'm the king. Just do it. So they have a double wedding, and they're both immediately married, and they go on a procession about the town, and the king and the pretty princess ride ahead. Now the pretty princess is queen, and they're doing the whole like wave into the crowds, schmoozing, getting gifts, all this sorts of things. And Tatterhood is still riding her goat while riding next to the prince, who's riding a horse, and the prince is like mad. He's like big mad because this is his whole life, right? He's stuck with this woman, and he's like grumbling and trying not to make eye contact, and he's like, I don't even know what to say to this ugly girl. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And so Tatterhood, as she's like taking in the sight, she's looking at this prince who's like, she can tell is stewing, and she's like, you don't even ask me why I'm riding this goat. And the prince is like, okay, well, here we go. Here's my nagging, ugly wife already starting. We barely got out to church, and here we go. Why are you riding a goat? And she's like, what goat? This is the most beautiful horse anyone has ever seen. And when the prince looks at her, it turns out she is in fact riding the most beautiful mare anyone has ever seen. And they continue riding on. The prince doesn't say anything because he's like, I don't even understand what just happened. And she goes, you didn't even ask me why I'm holding a wooden spoon. And the prince is like a little bit like curious, but also a little bit like, are you gonna harass me this entire ride? Like, what? Why are you wearing a wooden why are you holding a wooden spoon? And she goes, it's not a wooden spoon, don't be crazy, this is a jeweled scepter. And when the prince looks, it is in fact a jeweled scepter in her hand. And so they keep riding on, and Tatterhood's like, okay, here we go again. Since you have nothing else to ask me, I was just wondering why you didn't ask me why I'm dressed in rags. And the prince is like, oh, I get the game here. I get it. I'm catching on. I'm picking up what you're putting down. All right. So he's like, why do you wear rags, princess of mine? And she's like, what rags? And she's actually wearing a beautiful dress and a splendid crown. And the prince is like, oh, wow, okay. And then he doesn't even wait for her to ask. He just goes, why are you so ugly? And she's like, finally, I was wondering when you were going to ask me, but I'm actually not ugly at all. Turns out she's super beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman. She's actually 10 times prettier than her beautiful sister, which I don't know how you're imagining that, but I'm imagining it as something slightly terrifying and maybe vaguely elvish, because how else could you be 10 times prettier than the most beautiful woman in the world? But yeah, turns out the entire time, Tatterhood had the choice to appear ugly or beautiful, and she was just waiting for someone to ask her why she didn't. The prince and Tatterhood live happily ever after, and that is the end of the story. And this is such a silly, goofy story, and I love it so much, you guys, so I really wanted to share it with you, because it's one of those stories that just sort of pops up every so often in my brain, and I go, oh my god, this would be so funny, and then I keep forgetting to tell you. So I'm finally remembering to tell you. I have a couple of questions about this story, though. It never talks about, in the text, what happened to the adopted princess. She just disappears. So I like to imagine that the beggar's daughter, the beggar girl, and the witch were like, hey, your mom sucks. Like, low-key, she's kind of toxic. You want to just come live with us and learn how to be a witch and, like, be independent and free? And the little girl was like, yeah, absolutely. She immediately thought about replacing me as soon as the option was on the table, so yeah, I'm out. And that's why nobody talks about her, because they didn't even remember her. All the other crazy things were happening, and she was much better off. She becomes a very powerful witch and has a very happy life. That's my imagination in this story. The other thing I just kind of, like, think about with this story is that I love how, like, headstrong and, like, powerful Tatterhood is. She's, like, this mysterious, fae, changing little creature who comes out riding a goat, a full-size goat. It does not say a kid. And, like, she does so many amazing things, but it makes me very sad that by the end of the story, they're like, and she was beautiful, and everything about her that was unique and individual is now gone. That makes me very sad. So in my headcanon, she flip-flops between the two whenever she feels like, and she never actually gives up riding the goat. She rides the goat forever. She turns that horse back as soon as they're done with the procession. She only rides the horse when she's, like, trying to do fancy stuff and appear, like, super royal. Most of the time, she's just riding her goat around and still waving her wooden spoon and terrorizing her husband, who's a little bit shallow. Understandably so, because if I was him and my dad was like, hey, you marry this ugly broad so I can marry the pretty broad, I'd be like, fuck you, Dad. So, yeah, I get it. But yeah, that is the story of Tatterhood. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed sharing it with you. Let me know if there are any stories you want to hear. I do have a small list of requests, which means that Storycraft will continue. But when I run out of that, there's no telling what could happen. I have not decided if I'm going to keep it going. So if there are stories that you would like to hear, themes, ideas, concepts you want me to dig up, even if they're scary stories, hauntings, things like that, I am open to lots of possibilities when it comes to Storycraft. So definitely leave that in the comments below. And that's going to be it for me, guys. I appreciate your faces. And as always, I will catch you next time. Until then, guys, happy crafting. Bye.